It is official. She is the nominee by virtual call of the DNC. Next order of business, VP, running mate. Probably the most important decision thus far. Here it is.
Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris is closing in on the most important decision of her presidential run so far. Who will succeed her as VP if elected? Harris holding separate in-person meetings at her Washington home today with 3 of her top contenders: Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, according to a source familiar with the meetings. But Shapiro, mom, when asked by NBC News Saturday outside his home about his weekend plans.
Good. Are you headed to D.C.? Where did you go today?
I'm taking my dog for a walk. None of it is.
Walz also avoiding speculation earlier this week.
That's not a decision that I'll make. The Vice President herself will make that.
An announcement expected very soon, with Harris and her running mate kicking off a 7-state battleground tour with a rally in Philadelphia on Tuesday.
We have a fight in front of us, and we are the underdogs in this race.
All right, we got a fight in front of us, and we are the underdogs in this race. Quote from VP Harris. Now, according to the polling data, there's significant connections between, well, Trump's pick and what may be the pick of VP Harris, because Trump got no bump whatsoever with his VP choice. Let's see the polling. Here it is.
Polls, including one released today, show Harris and former President Trump locked in a tight race. And in nearly all of the critical battleground states, the vice president virtually eliminating Trump's lead from when President Biden was still in the race. Meanwhile, Trump ramped up his attacks against Harris at an Atlanta rally last night.
With our leadership, every disaster Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have created can be fixed, and it will be fixed very quickly.
Ali Rafa is outside the U.S. Naval Observatory where the vice president lives. And Ali, the media has been staked out there looking for clues.
That's right. A motorcade from Pennsylvania was spotted driving by earlier today. And former Attorney General Eric Holder, who oversaw this vetting process, was seen leaving a short time ago. Lester?
With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show. All right, let's get into it. The top contenders to be Kamala Harris's running mate got to this point in part because of their battling with Trump. 5 of the 6 vice presidential prospects who have met with Harris or the Harris team in recent days cultivated their state and national profiles by being prominent figures in the MAGA resistance, whether it was clashing with Trump as a governor or maybe a state prosecutor, defeating his protégés in important races, or pitching a new kind of politics in response to his rise. Presidents don't usually end up in direct confrontation with the politicians who rise as their counterweights during their first term. But Trump has now been on the scene long enough that those who rose in the backlash against his first term are rising still further into national politics. So one of the measures being utilized is their effectiveness to articulate a left-leaning message contrary to Trump's MAGA agenda. Effective representation, articulation, and demonstration seems to be the name of the game right now. So now one of them is likely to become the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic ticket, aiming to thwart his comeback bid. Some Democrats say their familiarity with Trump will be an asset to Harris. Trumpism lost every election for almost a decade, having to run against the very people who have beaten his crew time again and again must be driving him to melt down even further, said Jesse Ferguson, a Democratic strategist who worked on Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, which narrowly lost to Trump. Quote, "These people know how to contrast their common sense with the extreme weirdness of MAGA and Trump. They've proven it." This is a point I made early on. Contrast works well in presidential politics for Democrats. Biden didn't work as well, as you clearly see. But the contrast of Kamala Harris, even if you disagree with some of the policies, which I do myself, the contrast is evident. There's a clear decision here rather than a decision that seems, well, not so different than the other. There's more. The Trump campaign says they're not worried. Quote, our hearts go out to whomever Kamala Harris chooses as her running mate, as they will be asked every day for the next 95 days how they could possibly stand by the most weak, failed, and dangerously liberal candidate in history. Trump campaign spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt said in an email. And we will be more than prepared to hold them accountable for their own record as well. Yeah, you better, because you can't get anywhere with JD Vance here, okay? No matter who she chooses, it will be better than JD, guarantee you that. There's more. Pennsylvania governor, yeah, Josh Shapiro started building his national profile as a state attorney general when he brought suits against the Trump administration on issues including its attempt to reverse the contraception coverage requirement for health insurance and the travel ban against people from majority Muslim countries. He also fought Trump's attempt to stay in power after losing the 2020 election. In 2022, Shapiro ran for governor against Trump-endorsed MAGA diehard Senator Doug Mastriano and trounced him by nearly 15 points. The subpoena from the January 6th committee showed how this individual organized buses to Washington, D.C., January 6, 2021, was present on the restricted grounds of the U.S. Capitol that same day, entering an area on the east of the Capitol after other Trump terrorists broke through barricades. Though he said, well, I followed all of the police guidelines as they existed and left when it was clear it wasn't peaceful, is his story. So let's talk about Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat out of Arizona, a former astronaut and Navy pilot, was first elected in a 2020 special election, largely based on a referendum on Donald Trump himself. Kelly and President Joe Biden painted Arizona blue in a presidential election for the first time since 1996. Something very similar happened in the state of Georgia with the election of Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff. There's more. 2 years later, here we are. Kelly ran again for a full six-year term and defeated Trump-endorsed Republican Blake Masters. Disparaging Masters as a, quote, dangerous election denier, which countered Trump's campaign. A dangerous election denier and highlighting other unpopular Trump-aligned positions. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz got his start in the elected office running against or alongside backlash to a different Republican president winning a seat in Congress in 2006. He held his red trending House seat by less than 1 point in 2016 when Trump dominated the district by double digits. 2 years later, he rode a blue wave of anti-Trump sentiment to become governor of the state. You see the trend here. These are real trends. Now, we're not talking about propaganda because according to Trump, he's won everything. And all of his candidates always win. They do nothing but win, 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 win. The truth is, he knows where he loses. He's well aware of what to stay away from. And it seems as if the people who have historically defeated Trump are all contenders to be the VP pick. As I've said before, don't look for the VP to be the person that seems to be the most qualified. But no, it's a VP pick. It's a political pick. That's what it is. Always has been. All right. What are your thoughts, dear brother?
Well, Dr. Richey, the politics that both the Trump campaign and the Harris campaign seem to agree on is that this election will be determined, they think, by the voters who are not so thrilled with Donald Trump. Maybe they don't like Donald Trump, but are they worried that Kamala Harris is too liberal? That she's too much of a lefty, and as a result, they'll sort of go back to Donald Trump. That's the fury from both campaigns. That's where they think this race is going to be decided, and that's why at least the Harris campaign has put Josh Shapiro at the top, because he's seen as somebody who's more of a centrist than her, considered a little bit more to the right of her, and the theory is because he can win in a place like Pennsylvania, that he would be able to attract the suburban, independent, moderate voters as he has in the past, that a Harris is going to need to win a swing state like Pennsylvania. The rap against Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, even though that he's the best on television and he would energize the Democratic base and progressives, is that, well, Minnesota hasn't gone Republican since 1972. So you don't gain anything. But with Walz, you're expected to win Minnesota anyway. And oh, by the way, he could reinforce this image that perhaps Kamala Harris is to the left. The problem with Mark Kelly, and even though apparently Kamala Harris and Mark Kelly have a strong personal connection, is that Mark Kelly is boring. He's not very good on TV. He wouldn't fulfill the traditional role of being the attack dog that you normally expect in a vice presidential running mate. So that's why it seems like Shapiro's sort of leading. But the other part about this, which has been interesting, is that Kamala Harris is notorious for making decisions at the last minute. In other words, she takes all the time that she has, and in this case, she literally has until Tuesday, and she made it clear that she wants a governing partner. She wants somebody that she has a connection with. That's why she was meeting with these people again on Sunday to try to figure out if there's some sort of personal connection, assuming that they all do click with Kamala Harris. And you'd think that, well, if they've been able to get elected, they're probably terrific one-on-one. Then it comes down to, okay, maybe it's back to the political equation. And that's why, again, so many people seem to think that she'll go with Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, and you have a lot of people with different opinions in your ear about what decision to make.